There was one church in Jerusalem, and it was very big, not several churches. Acts chapter 8, verse 1, Luke says, "And there arose on that day a great persecution against the church in Jerusalem." Acts chapter 11, verse 22, Luke writes, "The report of this came to the ears of the church in Jerusalem." Acts chapter 15, verse 4, Luke describes the welcome that Paul and Barnabas received in Jerusalem like this: "When they came to Jerusalem, they were welcomed by the church and the apostles and the elders." Not churches, church, 3 times. So I have no reason to think Jerusalem had churches. I have 3 reasons to think it had a church. Now consider the numbers. Verse 41. Start with 120. We know that from chapter 1. Verse 41. There were added that day about 3,000 souls. So 3,120. Acts chapter 4, verse 4. "But many of those who had heard the word believed, and the number of the men came to about 5,000. Now that's the word male, not human. The men came to 5,000. And I take that to imply you got 10,000 people at least. Because it says in Acts 5:14, "And more than ever, believers were added to the Lord, multitudes of both men and women." So I have it at 10,000 minimum in Jerusalem. What did that look like? How do you do 10,000 in one church? Number 4, fourth observation. This church met in larger gatherings to hear the apostles in the temple, and in smaller gatherings in their homes where they ate together and prayed with each other. Verse 46. "And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts." Now, when it says that every day they were in the temple, be careful, because it doesn't necessarily follow that all of them every day were in the temple. I don't think it follows. What it does say is that every day there were Christians in the temple, and perhaps they were there some in the morning and some in the afternoon. You got to get 10,000 people in there. Now the temple was big, 26 acres or 35 acres, depending on how you measure the cubit. I read up on this a little bit just to remind myself. The court of the Gentiles, very big. Might have been able to squeeze 10,000 in. Would have been elbow to elbow. And get this, if Peter is every day shouting so loud in the temple that 10,000 Christians can hear him, that's going to last about 2 days. Because it would so totally disrupt everything that's going on, they wouldn't have allowed it. Well, they tried not to allow it anyway, right? Snatched him out of the temple twice because he was teaching. But somehow or other it says every day you got Christians in the temple and in their homes. So my guess is you got staggered attendance. Now here, this is totally speculation. All right, listen to me speculate a minute. I'm playing Peter here. Got to figure this out. We got 10,000 people. They need to devote themselves to the apostles' teaching, and there are no books. So they got to hear us. They got to hear substantial amounts of time. We got teaching to deliver because they don't know what's going on about who Jesus really was. These are people that have stiff-armed Jesus and they just got saved a few days ago. So how are we going to divide them up? Okay, the biggest and best place to do this is in the courts, in the temple. We can't have them all there at once. We got 7 days to work with, and we got 10,000 people, so maybe break the day in two and spread over 7 days and calculate several hundred. Well, we can do this. We can do this. Now, Peter says, I cannot do this every day. So James got to do some, and you break this down. This is apostolic teaching. That's all speculation, but you can see what we elders have been inspired by and illumined by. This wasn't easy in Jerusalem. You know how we know it wasn't easy? It didn't work. Chapter 6. You got ethnic issues. We do too. And we got number issues. Big. And so chapter 6 says, the widows were not being cared for by the Hellenists and the Hebrews. You got this conflict. And so they had to fix it. And they fixed it with 7 people. New organizational structure. Some people think that's the origin of the deacons. Probably is. So, it wasn't working. You just do the best you can. When something doesn't work, you fix it. Sound familiar? Does to me. That's the way life is. Even for the apostles. How much more for me? And all of our elders here. Here's the reason I think that they were going to the temple to be taught by the apostles. Chapter 2, verse 36 says, day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes. Now, chapter 5, verse 42 says, every day in the temple and from house to house, the apostles did not cease teaching and preaching Jesus Christ. To me, that seals the deal. They are going to the temple to hear apostolic teaching and preaching, and they're in staggered groups, because you can't have 10 to 15,000, because you got 10,000, and they're adding every day more people, so they're breaking up in groups. The apostles have it all worked out so their voices don't wear out because they got no microphones like I do, and they are teaching several hundred folks every morning, every afternoon, maybe. We don't know how they did it. What we know is they had to do it. They had to do it. They didn't sign up for this. They just wanted to go out and teach. They didn't want to figure out organization. Who wants to figure out organization? Some of you, I praise God for you. We got some incredibly gifted people in this church who love to dink around with organizations. I'd rather not. I'd rather just study and preach, but I have this pulpit, and so they're pulling my cord and saying, explain this. Okay, I'm trying.